Just as our boy is about to hit the panic button, his only lifeline comes from the most unexpected person imaginable, the school's stone-cold genius, the Ice Princess Mizudori, who offers to help him. In a quaint home, the day begins quietly for a young boy named Miharu. As he brushes his teeth, his gaze falls upon a familiar sight, a book titled The Unsmiling Princess in the White Castle, once again lying discarded on the floor. In the other room, his siblings are engrossed in the television, completely absorbed by the story of a princess residing in an immaculate castle. In the tale, many visitors attempt to make the princess smile, but their efforts are always in vain. It isn't until three heroes appear, the Ivory Heroes and the White Bravers, that the story begins to shift. The soft hum of the background music fills the house. Without hesitation, Miharu switches off the TV. His siblings, startled and upset, cry out in frustration, protesting the abrupt interruption. Remaining composed, Miharu firmly reminds them that they must leave soon, or they'll be late for preschool. Though reluctant, his sister Ruri and brother Ryo eventually comply, still a bit disgruntled. Their mother, hurried in with a bag slung over her shoulder, pauses to apologize to Miharu for having to leave him in charge as she rushes off to work. Prompted by Miharu, the siblings brighten up, cheerfully wishing their mother a good morning before she leaves. As Miharu walks to preschool, holding Ruri and Ryo's hands, his thoughts drift to the future. With spring approaching, he'll be starting high school, yet his responsibilities won't change. He knows he'll still need to care for his siblings since their parents are always busy with work. At times, the burden feels heavy and looking after them on his own can be exhausting. But whenever he sees their joyful smiles as they wave goodbye, a sense of happiness fills him. It reminds him that despite the challenges, there are unexpected rewards in taking care of them. Later, during lunch at school, Miharu's friend invites him on a group date. Miharu declines, but his friend insists, explaining that they need one more guy and urging Miharu to take a break from babysitting. After thinking it over, Miharu agrees on the condition that he can bring his siblings along. His friend, shocked by the response, initially thinks Miharu is joking, but soon realizes that Miharu isn't planning to go at all. Still, his friend tries to persuade him, suggesting that Miharu should add some excitement to his high school life with a bit of romance. Unfazed, Miharu calmly responds that he's content with how things are and reassures his friend not to worry about him. Miharu's friend casually asks him who he thinks is the cutest girl in their class, but Miharu's mind is elsewhere. His attention is drawn to a boy nervously asking Mizudori Yuki, a girl with an adorable yet distant demeanor, to spend time with him after school. She coldly rejects his offer, stating she already has other plans. As the boy walks away, his friends commend him for his courage, trying to soften the sting of rejection. Mizudori, with her trademark emotionless expression, quietly takes her seat. Miharu's friends begin talking about her, describing her popularity and how she has the face of a fairy tale princess, never showing a smile. Her cool, mysterious nature keeps her distant from everyone, and she turns down all invitations. It's because of this that she's earned the nickname Ice Princess. Miharu, having never spoken to her, listens as one of his friends sorrowfully admits to being rejected by her 3 times. Trying to lighten the mood, Miharu jokes that commoners like them are no match for a princess like her. His friend, determined to make the best of things, stands up and places a reassuring hand on Miharu's shoulder, encouraging him not to waste his youth. Miharu silently agrees, knowing he wants to enjoy his teenage years, but his primary commitment remains caring for his younger siblings. Later, after school, Miharu reads the story of the unsmiling princess to Ruri. When she asks what the princess looks like, Miharu's mind unexpectedly conjures an image of Mizudori. The thought leaves him puzzled, and he shakes his head to clear it, confused by the sudden comparison. Ruri notices and looks at him, baffled. Meanwhile, Ryo, in a fit of playful frustration, kicks Miharu and then demands not to be kicked back, pretending to be a white braver. After a moment of pretend play, Ruri asks Miharu to continue reading. Despite his frustration, he reluctantly agrees, turning the page and diving back into the story. Later that evening, Miharu orders dinner for himself and his siblings. After they finish eating, he gives them a bath and tucks them into bed just before their mother returns home late at night. The next day, after school, Miharu is packing his bag in the classroom when he stumbles upon a toy weapon, a snow-white rod, that Rio must have hidden there. Amused, Miharu picks up the toy and, thinking he's alone, pretends to transform into a superhero, declaring himself Snow White. Lost in the moment, he strikes a pose, imagining himself as the hero. However, his playful moment is interrupted when he realizes someone is watching. Startled and embarrassed, Miharu freezes in place, turning to find Mizudori standing nearby, observing him silently. Expecting her to laugh, Miharu prepares to laugh it off, but to his surprise, Mizudori doesn't react. Instead, she walks up to him quietly, her expression unreadable. She takes the toy from his hand and calmly tells him that he's quite good at pretending to be a hero. Mizudori then asks if he's a fan of the White Braver, impressed by his performance. Miharu, caught off guard by her sudden closeness and the fact that she knows his name, hesitates before explaining that it's actually his younger siblings who are fans. Mizudori, still curious, asks if she can try the toy herself. As she attempts to imitate Miharu's superhero act, he awkwardly offers her tips, guiding her through the motions while trying to process the strangeness of the situation. He can't quite believe this is happening, but he plays along, unsure of what to make of her. Suddenly, Mizudori receives a notification on her phone. She glances at it and tells Miharu that she must leave for an appointment. As she gathers her things, she thanks him for the impromptu lesson and quickly departs, leaving Miharu standing there, intrigued by her mysterious demeanor. Later, as Miharu walks home with his siblings after picking them up from school, Rio casually mentions that they're heading to their friend Rei's house to play. Miharu, surprised, asks if Rei is a new friend. Rio nods, explaining that they made plans the day before. With a mischievous grin, Rio teases Miharu, saying that Rei had told him his sister wasn't very good at playing hero, poking fun at Miharu's own performance earlier. Miharu felt a mix of irritation and determination, insisting that he was doing just fine. Ruri pointed out the absence of Rei's parents, noting that his father was abroad, and his mother was in the hospital. This realization struck a chord with Miharu. He suddenly felt a kinship with Rei, understanding that they both had older sisters and shared similar challenges. As Rio and Ruri gleefully ran toward their new friend's house, they assured Miharu that Rei didn't feel lonely, thanks to having a sibling like them. When they arrived, Miharu was surprised to learn that Rei's last name was Mizudori. The door swung open sharply, revealing Rei, with Mizudori standing beside him. The children hurried inside, quickly immersing themselves in play, transforming into Snow White, Sugar White, and Lily White with their toys. Meanwhile, Miharu and Mizudori found themselves seated awkwardly together, sipping tea in silence. Miharu felt out of place in her home, unsure of how to bridge the gap between them. Breaking the silence, Mizudori mentioned that she had seen Ruri and Rio at school but hadn't realized they were Miharu's siblings. When Miharu admitted he didn't know Rei was Mizudori's brother either, she smiled softly, commenting on how cute her siblings were. For a moment, her icy demeanor seemed to thaw, revealing a glimpse of warmth beneath. Just then, Ruri approached them, her cheeks rosy and a joyful expression lighting up her face as she clutched a book. Eagerly, she asked Mizudori to read it aloud. With a gentle smile, Mizudori began the story, while Ruri and Miharu listened intently, though they noticed that Mizudori's face remained mostly expressionless. Suddenly, Rio jumped into action, delivering a forceful kick as he acted out a brave character, collapsing dramatically. Mizudori, caught up in the lively atmosphere, joined the playful chaos with the other children. Meanwhile, Rei, unable to contain his annoyance, shouted at his sister Mizudori. Miharu theatrically places a hand on his chest and announces that they must face the consequences of their actions. Even as he puts on this grand performance, he pretends to bow down in mock agony. The other children cheer, excitedly pretending to defeat the imaginary villain. Mizudori watches the fun and comments that it's the happiest she has seen her brother. However, she also expresses disappointment in her own acting skills. Miharu reassures her, saying that his siblings often tease him about his acting too. She admits that she also receives criticism for her expressionless face but acknowledges that what truly matters to her is Rei's smile. Realizing it's time to go home, Miharu tells his siblings they need to leave for dinner. Although they are reluctant to leave the fun behind, he explains that it's time to eat and checks his phone to order food. Mizudori, surprised by this, asks Miharu what he usually does for dinner. A bit awkwardly, he replies that when their parents aren't home, they usually order food or pick up something from convenience stores. Without a word, Mizudori ties her long hair up and begins preparing a delicious meal. She skillfully chops fresh ingredients, seasons them, and cooks up a delightful dish. Miharu's siblings are in awe of her cooking, watching her every move. Feeling a bit guilty, Miharu apologizes to Mizudori for the trouble, but she assures him it's no problem. She explains that while ready-made food isn't bad, it often has too much oil and salt, which should be avoided. Mizudori advises Miharu to be mindful of his salt and oil intake, and he agrees to be more careful in the future. As he watches his siblings eat happily, a wave of sadness washes over him as he reflects on how much he misses fresh, homemade meals. After dinner, while Mizudori wipes the children's faces, Miharu encourages them to thank her for her help. Suddenly, Mizudori accidentally places the hand towel on Miharu's face, cleaning his mouth as well. Embarrassed, Miharu blushes and thanks her awkwardly. Later, as they wash the dishes together, Mizudori apologizes for her earlier comments about pre-prepared food. She confides in Miharu about her struggles to fill her mother's role and her dissatisfaction with how she is managing. Miharu comforts her, explaining that only siblings truly understand certain experiences, and that shared moments are what matter most. Noticing Mizudori's softened demeanor, he points out that, as older siblings, they share a closer bond with the children than their parents do. This connection allows them to protect their younger siblings while also creating joyful moments together. In a playful mood, Miharu decides to act out his superhero transformation again. He laughs, admitting that these antics will probably embarrass him when he's older. Mizudori claps and smiles at his performance, asking if she could try it too. Miharu reassures her, saying that her expressions soften around the kids. He explains that, although it may be hard for others to notice, she does smile and encourages her not to think of herself as incapable of showing happiness. With newfound confidence, Miharu suggests they could always try smiling for someone together. Suddenly feeling shy, he asks if she would be okay with that, and Mizudori looks at him with bright eyes. After finishing the dishes, Mizudori brings out some pudding for the children, apologizing that they don't all have the same flavors. This leads to a chaotic argument among the kids over a single melon-flavored pudding. To resolve the dispute, Miharu jokingly threatens to eat all the ice cream, prompting the children to rush toward him. Mizudori joins in the fun, playfully challenging the kids to a battle for the jellies. As everyone collapses to the ground in laughter, Mizudori smiles sincerely for the first time, looking at Miharu with genuine happiness. Rei's loud cheer suddenly startles Miharu, who asks Mizudori in shock if she was really smiling. Stunned by the observation, she struggles to understand her own emotions. Miharu reflects on the story of the unsmiling princess, drawing parallels between Mizudori, the princess, and himself. As they prepare to leave, Mizudori asks Miharu to visit again, revealing that his presence made her smile and that she wants to smile more for those she cherishes. Miharu takes her hand, thinking that if a princess wishes for something, he will gladly visit her castle again. The following day at school, a boy eagerly approaches Mizudori, ready to confess his feelings. However, as usual, she rejects him with her trademark expressionless face, calmly explaining that she has plans after school. As the other students begin to whisper and tease, they remark that the rejection was predictable, pointing out how her expression never changes. Two girls join in, praising her beauty and jokingly suggesting she must be attending grand balls after school. Despite the teasing, Mizudori remains silent and unresponsive. Miharu, however, knows the truth behind Mizudori's calm exterior. She is simply caring for her brother, far removed from the rumors swirling around her. As he observes her serious demeanor, he finds it hard to believe that just yesterday, he had been at her home and discovered they both share the same responsibility of looking after their siblings. His face flushes with embarrassment when Mizudori suddenly meets his gaze with her usual emotionless stare, causing him to jolt in surprise. Puzzled and flustered, he awkwardly excuses himself to the bathroom, even though he had planned to eat lunch with his friend. After school, Miharu visits Mizudori's home again and asks her how he can make her smile. Mizudori simply replies that they can continue coming over to her house to play like this. As they leave, Ryo beams with a hopeful smile and asks if they can visit Mizudori again tomorrow, affectionately calling her Rei's Nini. Touched by his adorable expression, she smiles without thinking and tells them they are welcome to come anytime. The days pass quickly, and one afternoon at school, while washing his hands after lunch, Mihara finds himself lost in thought about how Mizudori does so much for her brother. He resolves not to worry about their relationship and decides to visit her house again, feeling happy that the kids will have more chances to play. While walking through the corridor, he spots Mizudori moving with her usual calmness, admired and envied by the girls around her. She seems unfazed by their attention, appearing irritated by the typical gossip. To Mihara's surprise, she approaches him, causing him to feel a bit off balance as he senses everyone's eyes on them. Ignoring the stares, she asks about his siblings' favorite food. Initially puzzled, he soon smiles and replies that they love curry. She thanks him and walks away without saying anything more. As he watches Mizudori leave, Mihara feels a twinge of disappointment, realizing that he was right. Her focus is solely on her brother. She didn't even ask about his favorite food. The other students, intrigued by their interaction, start whispering and speculating whether Miharu is Mizudori's boyfriend. To clear up the misunderstanding, he casually stretches and, with a grin, loudly claims that the teacher sent her to relay a message. The girls seem relieved to hear there's no romantic involvement. After school, Miharu wonders whether he should even visit her house again. When he arrives, Mizudori, with her usual emotionless expression, announces that they will be playing house today at Ruri's request. Ruri, excited about the idea, proposes a lottery to assign roles. As Mihara picks, he reflects on his relationship with Mizudori. He thinks that they are not friends yet, so maybe they are just classmates or perhaps fellow guardians. When the lottery results are announced, it's revealed that Mizudori will play the role of the younger sibling while Mihara takes on the role of the older brother. They exchange awkward glances as Ruri excitedly assigns herself the role of the mother, Rei as the father with a makeshift mustache, and Rio as the family dog. The scene is set for their imaginative game of house, with both Miharu and Mizudori as the older brother and little sister. Rei, playing the father, announces his arrival home. Ruri rushes to him with enthusiasm, declaring that dinner is ready and encouraging him to eat. Meanwhile, Rio, acting as the dog, happily wags his pretend tail, adding to the playful atmosphere. Miharu glances at Mizudori in her role as his little sister and momentarily imagines her as an adorable child, but he quickly shakes off the thought. Realizing that playing the older sibling is not an easy task, he tells her that she should play the baby. Mizudori, looking a bit puzzled, suggests that speaking less might help her act the part more convincingly. As the role-playing continues, Ruri hands Miharu a baby bottle with a bright smile, asking him to feed little sister Mizudori. She affectionately attends to Rei as her husband. Though Miharu grumbles about how feeding children is typically a mother's job, he eventually gives in when Ruri doesn't seem to listen. Mizudori, playing the baby, settles into Miharu's lap and announces it's time to eat, making playful noises that cause Miharu to blush. Touched by her effort to be convincing, he decides to take his role seriously. However, he soon finds himself distracted by the silky texture of her hair and the pleasant scent of her shampoo. When Mizudori sits up and thanks him for the food, he breathes a sigh of relief, feeling he has tackled the hardest part. But then she instructs him to burp the baby by gently tapping her back to release any swallowed air, warning that she might vomit otherwise. She adds that he should be familiar with this from caring for his own siblings. Confused, Miharu stays silent but later explains to her while cooking that his parents have remarried, and the twins came with his stepfather, so he lacks experience with babies. He mentions that his stepfather was one of Mizudori's mother's clients, and both of them are workaholics who had discussed hiring a nanny. Mizudori is impressed by his dedication and realizes that Miharu has stepped up to support them both. Miharu reflects on his own childhood, sharing with a touch of sadness that he often felt alone, even during meals when his mother was rarely around. Despite this loneliness, he holds a deep respect for her, recognizing the challenges she faced as a single parent raising him. Determined not to let his siblings experience the same feelings of isolation he endured, he resolves to ensure they never know the sting of being alone. Noticing the look on Mizudori's face, he quickly apologizes, reassuring her that his care for his siblings is something he values deeply. She thanks him for sharing this and adjusts the stove, remarking that his dedication makes him an even more remarkable person. Mizudori observes that the three children truly look like siblings, complimenting Mihara on being a wonderful big brother. In return, he praises her for being a great sister, although she humbly disagrees. As they cook and engage in playful bickering, the three children watch them with wide-eyed admiration, captivated by their heartfelt interactions. During the meal, Miharu expresses his gratitude but is puzzled to find croquettes, his favorite dish, on the table instead of the curry his siblings love. After dinner, he offers Mizudori payment for the meal, but she looks visibly confused and reluctant, saying they only came to play with her brother. With hesitation, he insists that she accept the money, explaining that his parents instructed him to do so, and that his siblings enjoy playing with Rei. He warns her that it will be harder to visit if she refuses. With a sad expression, he asks if it's okay for him to come over regularly, worried that as her classmate, frequent visits might cause trouble if others find out. He fears that rumors could harm her reputation, though he struggles to express this directly. Praising her as an amazing person, he is cut off by her emotionless response, saying he is merely a classmate to her. Despite feeling disheartened, Miharu takes a seat, but she quickly adds that she wouldn't prepare someone's favorite food if they didn't matter to her. Stunned, Miharu realizes that she learned about his favorite food from Rei, who had asked Miharu's siblings about it. Mizudori wanted to surprise them, knowing they would be around for a while. With a hopeful smile, she asks if he likes the food and hints that she'll make curry tomorrow, asking him to keep it a secret. Overcome with emotion, he hides under the table, his face flushed with joy at her thoughtful gesture. Mizudori watches him in confusion, puzzled by his ecstatic reaction. As they chat, their siblings approach with smiles, offering them cards for a home game. They accept gratefully, seeing this as part of their fun. While handling the cards, Miharu reflects that despite their interactions, their relationship remains one of classmates and fellow guardians, not friends. Both are stunned when they open the cards to find themselves labeled as mother and father. With amused smiles, the kids tease them, saying they look like a married couple cooking dinner together. Miharu playfully scolds his younger siblings for their teasing, and laughter ensues as the children run off. Miharu decides it's best to establish a few rules for their visits to Mizudori's house after school to prevent any misunderstandings. The first rule they agree on is to always prioritize their younger siblings, which they both wholeheartedly support. He also suggests that his family should cover the cost of any meals Mizudori prepares, hoping it will make her feel more comfortable accepting money from them. Lastly, he proposes that they avoid discussing their siblings at school. Although Mizudori is hesitant at first, she eventually agrees after Miharu persists. While she claims not to care about what others think, Miharu remains cautious, believing that keeping their interactions at school to a minimum is crucial for maintaining peace, even though he knows it won't be easy. In class, both Miharu and Mizudori are taken by surprise when the teacher announces a new seating arrangement, determined by lottery. Miharu finds himself seated right next to Mizudori, while his friend Mikage turns around with a cheeky grin and whispers good luck for sitting next to the princess. Mizudori responds with a scowl, but Mikage, undeterred, invites her to karaoke after school to celebrate their new seats. She quickly declines, stating she already has plans. As the class buzzes with chatter, Kawano, the student sitting next to Mikage, shyly calls out to Mizudori, expressing how happy she is to sit near her. With a dramatic flourish, she places her hands on her chest, closes her eyes, and loudly asks Mizudori about the toner she uses, leaving everyone confused. Mizudori, wide-eyed and expressionless, replies that she uses her mother's toner but hasn't paid attention to the brand. She promises to let Kawano know later. Impressed, Kawano seems fascinated by Mizudori's calm demeanor. As the teacher instructs the class to focus on their books, everyone returns to their desks. Miharu feels relaxed, thinking that since neither he nor Mizudori are particularly talkative, sitting next to each other should be fine. However, he is startled when he pulls out a monster encyclopedia from his bag instead of his textbook. Realizing that his brother Ryo must have sneaked it in there, he informs the teacher, who suggests that he share it with Mizudori. Embarrassed by the sudden attention, Miharu hides his head as the other students stare. Mizudori leans in to whisper about a show her brother was watching, but she stops when Miharu pulls away, reminding her of their agreement not to discuss their siblings at school. Doubts begin to creep into Miharu's mind about whether the seating arrangement will work out after all. After school, while Miharu is packing his bag, Mikage asks if he's going to pick up his siblings from preschool. Kawano, standing nearby, is surprised to learn that he takes care of them. Mikage explains that Miharu looks after his siblings because their parents are often busy with work. Impressed, Kawano mentions that she also has a younger sister but leaves most of the responsibilities to their mom. Intrigued, Kawano then asks Mizudori if she has any siblings, but Mizudori quickly makes a cross sign, signaling that she can't discuss them. She excuses herself and heads home. Watching her leave, Miharu feels a sense of helplessness, realizing that his rule about not discussing siblings has led Mizudori to completely avoid the topic. Suddenly, an announcement requests Aoba, Miharu, and Mizudori to come to the staff room immediately, causing them both to feel anxious. Upon arrival, the head teacher asks Mizudori to come into his office first, leaving Miharu waiting outside. He wonders nervously why they were called, fearing the teachers might have discovered his visits to Mizudori's house. His thoughts are interrupted when the teacher calls him in. The teacher, observing Miharu closely, inquires about his responsibilities for his siblings and whether it's affecting his sleep or academic performance. Miharu reassures him that he is managing well. The teacher smiles and suggests that Miharu could learn from Mizudori and aim for perfect quiz scores. Confused, Miharu responds that quizzes depend on intelligence and aren't related to his responsibilities at home. The teacher laughs, revealing he was joking about the quiz scores. He acknowledges that Miharu's parents come home late and then taps Miharu's hand, asking if he knows anything about Mizudori, who also cares for her siblings. Miharu confirms he is aware of her situation, which shocks the teacher. With a hint of suspense, the teacher then asks if Miharu has learned anything from her. Perplexed by the question, Miharu doesn't answer, and the teacher explains that during his conversation with Mizudori, she mentioned her mother is still in the hospital. When asked if she has anyone to rely on, she initially made a cross sign, indicating she couldn't disclose any details. However, after he assured her that he wouldn't pry, she revealed with her usual expressionless face that there is someone she can depend on. This revelation visibly surprises the teacher. He explains that Mizudori recently entrusted this responsibility to someone and admits he had never seen such a look on her face before. The teacher then asks Miharu if he has any idea about this situation. Instead of responding, Miharu rushes to the door, saying he needs to pick up his siblings. Pausing with a smile, he tells the teacher that he too has someone he can depend on. The teacher, relieved, folds his hands, satisfied that Miharu's expression reflects the support he was hoping for. As Miharu hurries to find Mizudori, he anxiously fears she might have already left. He regrets not asking for her number to avoid situations like this, and realizes he interrupted her attempt to talk about her brother in class. Driven by urgency, he runs faster, determined to speak with her. He finally catches up with her outside the preschool, and their eyes meet. Exhausted from running, he leans on his knees, and showing concern, she steps closer and asks how long he's been waiting to talk about the show Ray was watching, which she tried to mention earlier in class. Their siblings are thrilled to see them outside the school, happily heading home together. However, their joy is abruptly interrupted by a loud and forceful noise. Kawano angrily steps in, demanding to know what's going on. Both Miharu and Mizudori look at her with concern. Kawano abruptly stops them and demands to know what's going on. Ray steps forward sweetly and asks if Kawano is Mizudori's friend. Recognizing Ray as Mizudori's little brother, Kawano is taken aback and finds his adorable face enchanting, exclaiming that he's a treat for her eyes. After settling down on a nearby bench, Kawano starts to piece together the situation as Mizudori explains she's there to pick up her younger brother from preschool. Miharu quietly asks Mizudori to keep his visit to their house a secret. When Kawano is asked about her sister, she proudly shows a picture on her phone, saying her sister is in 4th grade. Meanwhile, their younger siblings happily play in the sand, building castles. Miharu is surprised to see that Kawano's sister, despite being in elementary school, is already wearing makeup. Mizudori calmly admires her sister's beauty, keeping her expression neutral. Kawano cheerfully explains that she practices makeup on her sister at home. Mizudori, a bit skeptical, praises Kawano, expressing amazement since she isn't familiar with makeup. Kawano excitedly suggests they visit the market after school to look at cosmetics. Mizudori politely declines, stating she has other plans. Mihara feels puzzled, wondering why she is so determined in her decision even after picking up her brother. As they continue talking, Rei asks Mizudori for help building a sandcastle. Kawano is amazed to see Mizudori, the princess of the school, happily playing in the sand without worrying about getting her uniform dirty. Watching her build the sandcastle, Mihara struggles to connect this playful side of Mizudori with her usual school persona. He asks Kawano why she admires Mizudori so much. Kawano smiles and explains that every girl looks up to princesses. She shares that she was once an ordinary girl who loved manga and was captivated by Mizudori's beauty and grace during exams. Inspired by Mizudori, Kawano started wearing makeup to try and emulate her elegance, hoping to become her friend. Just then, when Rei hands Mizudori a muddy ball, Kawano rushes over to stop her from getting dirty, accidentally causing the ball to split in two. Kawano quickly says she's sorry, but Rei, grinning widely, gives her a thumbs up and assures her that he'll rebuild it. Kawano explains that her intention was simply to protect Mizudori. Mizudori appreciates this gesture, even if it leaves a stain on her shirt. Standing tall and without much expression, she admits that she finds it hard to smile and play with kids, but she feels happy as long as her brother is joyful. She remembers someone once suggesting they could try smiling together, a notion that feels tough but one she's determined to tackle. With a smile, Mizudori announces that she also wants to get dirty. The kids cheer and enthusiastically cover her in mud as they join forces to construct a sandcastle. When they step back to admire their muddy masterpiece, laughter fills the air, followed by applause. Mizudori, genuinely enjoying the moment, joins in the clapping, and her previously cold demeanor starts to warm up. Seeing this change, Mihara turns to Kawano and says that even though Mizudori often seems quiet and expressionless, making many view her as an ice princess, she is actually just a regular girl who loves her brother and wants to connect with others. As they watch Mizudori clap, she glances back at them, her usual expression still intact. Kawano nudges Mihara gently, and although he's a bit confused, he listens as she explains that while she had admired Mizudori from afar, she now realizes there's no need for that kind of admiration. Feeling inspired, Kawano scoots closer to Mizudori and sits beside her with a cheerful smile. She suggests they exchange contact information. To lighten the mood, she also asks Mihara for his details, hoping to create a real connection. As they play, time flies by, and they only notice how late it's gotten when they realize they are all covered in mud. They decide it's time to head home. Mizudori teasingly tells Mihara that she wishes she could stay forever. Embarrassed, he shyly asks for her contact information and feels a surge of happiness when she gives it to him. Kawano shows Mizudori a flyer for a gemstone event called the Brilliance of the Stars, happening on Sunday, June 22nd, at the shopping center near the station. She thinks Mizudori might be interested, especially since Mizudori often wears gemstone hairpins. Mizudori, however, mentions that she only wears the hairpins because her father gave them to her, and she isn't particularly interested in accessories. Still, Kawano compliments the hairpin, saying it's charming. She then asks Mizudori if it might be difficult to attend the event because of the crowd, especially if she brings Rei along. Meanwhile, in the school cafeteria, Miharu's classmate Mikagi asks if Miharu is free that Saturday to see a movie. Miharu explains that his mother is working that weekend, so he has to take care of his younger siblings, the twins. Mikagi understands and comments on how much Miharu's mother works. Miharu replies that she enjoys her job. Mikagi advises Miharu to make sure he takes breaks and not push himself too hard. Miharu reflects on this, realizing Mikagi might be right about how challenging it is to care for his siblings. Later, after school, Miharu finds himself at Mizudori's house with his twin siblings, Ryo and Rei. The children are playing with a toy, and Rei announces that Mizudori has lost again, with Ryo pointing out that it's the third time in a row. Amid the playful chaos, Mizudori remarks on how difficult the game is. Miharu starts looking around the room and notices the neatly arranged clothing, the neatly stacked books, and a sewing machine, all hinting at how hard Mizudori works in her daily life. As the children become excited about watching a new episode of their favorite show, White Bravers, Mizudori suggests another round of their game, but the children are already focused on the show, and the moment slips away. While watching the kids, Miharu spots the gemstone exhibition flyer and remembers the conversation Mizudori had with Kawano at school. He asks Mizudori if she plans on attending the event. Mizudori explains that Kawano gave her the flyer, but she hasn't decided whether she'll go. Miharu recalls Mikagi's earlier advice about taking breaks and realizes how much responsibility Mizudori carries, not only managing her household but also looking after her younger brother, Rei. Miharu suggests that Mizudori take a break and attend the gemstone exhibition with Kawano over the weekend. He offers to take care of Rei in her place. Mizudori, without showing much emotion, asks if he is really suggesting she go with Kawano. Taken aback by her reaction, Miharu confirms, adding that he would look after Ryo, Rei, and Ruri so she can enjoy herself for a change. Mizudori hesitates, her calm demeanor unchanged. She asks why Miharu is offering something so unexpected. Miharu explains that he just wants to help lighten her load, recognizing how hard she works to take care of her family. Mizudori reflects for a moment before suggesting, in her practical style, that maybe the best way to reduce fatigue would be for her to take care of all 3 children. She then casually recommends that Miharu should go watch a movie with Mikagi instead, subtly implying that maybe he's the one who needs a break. This leaves Miharu confused, as her response seems to contradict the usual assumption that she would be the one needing rest. The conversation takes on a light-hearted tone as they seem to playfully argue over who should take the break. Eventually, they decide to settle it with a game involving a toy, and the loser has to complete a challenge set by the winner. Miharu, full of confidence, agrees, though his thoughts remain focused on how exhausting it must be for Mizudori. As the game begins, Miharu asks if she ever feels overwhelmed by it all. Mizudori, as composed as ever, replies that it doesn't feel that difficult for her to manage everything. She shifts the conversation back to Miharu, suggesting that maybe he's the one pushing himself too hard. Miharu continues to reflect on her answer, mentioning how even grocery shopping, especially when carrying extra items for her siblings, must be exhausting. He wonders if she is underestimating how tiring these tasks can be. Mizudori, however, maintains her practical approach, brushing off Miharu's concerns. In a humorous moment, she recalls how Miharu not only washed the dishes the other day but also cleaned the burnt stove while they talked. Meanwhile, the children sit quietly, watching their show, seemingly unaware of the conversation. As their playful game continues, Mizudori asks Miharu if he was on class duty the previous day, to which he confirms. The conversation shifts, and Mizudori brings up a serious point. She gently tells Miharu not to make decisions about Rei on his own, reminding him that Rei is still young and decisions about his care should be made together. Her protective nature over her brother is clear. Miharu reflects on her words and realizes that his offer to look after the children may have come across the wrong way. He reassures Mizudori that he never intended to leave his siblings behind just to have fun. Miharu explains his intentions, and Mizudori, with her usual inexpressive face, stares at him. She asks a simple but direct question, wondering if his suggestion wasn't to have fun without the children, then what was the real reason? The question catches Miharu off guard, forcing him to quickly think. He clarifies that his offer has nothing to do with selfishness. He wants to show gratitude for everything Mizudori does daily. He acknowledges how hard she works, balancing household chores, studying at home, taking care of her younger brother Rei, and handling countless other responsibilities. Miharu has witnessed her dedication firsthand and realizes she deserves a break. He admits that he probably didn't express himself well earlier, but he is genuinely concerned about Mizudori's well-being. He explains that his intention was to lighten her burden by suggesting she spend time with Kawano, believing it would help her relax more effectively. Miharu also reasons that if Mizudori and Kawano do things like browse cosmetics or talk about things that might not interest the kids, it would be less stressful, as they wouldn't have to attend to the children constantly. Mizudori listens to his explanation and makes a simple but surprising observation. She suggests that Miharu could join them, asking if that wouldn't solve the issue. This unexpected suggestion leaves Miharu momentarily speechless, as he hadn't anticipated Mizudori inviting him along. While Miharu processes her offer, the toy they were playing with suddenly catches his attention. The doll, which had a sword stuck in it as part of their game, unexpectedly flies through the air, startling him. He glances at Mizudori, who remains as composed and unemotional as ever, watching him without giving anything away. Just as Miharu starts to feel distressed, Rei runs up to them, concerned by what he perceives as a fight, and asks them to stop. Both Miharu and Mizudori, startled by Rei's comment, apologize to him, realizing how strange the situation might have appeared. Shortly afterward, Miharu's sister Ruri innocently asks if everyone is planning to go somewhere. Mizudori, in her usual calm manner, explains that yes, they are all going out together next weekend. Miharu, still confused by everything that's happening, tries to protest, asking Mizudori to reconsider the idea. However, Mizudori doesn't need to say anything. Her silent, steady gaze makes it clear to Miharu that he had lost the game by knocking over the doll, and therefore, he has to comply with Mizudori's decision. Realizing he has no further arguments, Miharu accepts his fate. In her practical tone, Mizudori reminds him that even when they're with the children, there's no need to be overly attentive all the time. She tells him that he's used to dealing with the kids and that her suggestion for all of them to go together is the best way for everyone to have fun without placing too much responsibility on any one person. As Miharu reflects on her words, he acknowledges that as the loser of their little game, he must follow her decision. That evening, Miharu heads home, feeling tired but somewhat at peace with how things have turned out. When he arrives, his mother mentions something about informing the other parents at the mall the next day. Miharu thanks her for handling that responsibility. His mother also asks him to visit Mizudori's mom in the hospital, and Miharu agrees. His mother reminds him that the exhibition will be open for a while, so there's no need to rush taking the children if he doesn't want to. However, Miharu, having already made up his mind, reassures his mother that he wants to spend the day with his younger siblings, and he knows that Mizudori also felt the same as him. His mother gives him a warm smile and encourages him to enjoy the date. Miharu, still distracted, automatically responds with a yes while fidgeting with his smartphone, when a new message from Mizudori pops up on his phone, mentioning that she's looking forward to the next day. Suddenly, everything clicks for Miharu, and he impulsively shouts to his mother, trying to deny the implication that it's a date. In his panic, he ends up waking his younger brothers, who had just fallen asleep. The next day, Miharu and the children arrive at the mall, with the kids running around energetically, eager for the day's activities. When Miharu finally meets Mizudori, she approaches him with an apology for keeping him waiting. However, Miharu looks different from usual, wearing a cap and glasses, clearly trying to disguise himself. Mizudori asks if he is really Miharu. This catches him off guard. Miharu, feeling self-conscious, realizes he may have overdone it with his disguise. He had worried that people might recognize them if they were seen together at the mall. It is obvious that Mizudori notices, but she doesn't say anything more, instead suggesting they start their outing by having lunch. Miharu, relieved, agrees, thinking it is a good way to begin their day. As Miharu sits down with his plate of noodles, the bustling atmosphere of the mall makes him feel a bit out of place. He isn't used to being in such a busy environment, especially with the children running around. The idea of the outing still unsettles him, especially after his mother called it a date. Even though he keeps denying it, the thought lingers, and he can't shake the feeling that today is somehow significant. The children have their lunches too, which come with toys as part of a promotion. They are delighted, though their focus soon shifts to the food. When asked if they like it, they respond honestly, saying the food is good, but not as tasty as what Rei's big sister Mizudori cooks at home. That simple remark leaves Miharu silent, understanding how much of a compliment it is to Mizudori and a reminder of how much she takes care of her brother. Mizudori, usually composed and expressionless, lets a rare small smile appear, her eyes sparkling slightly at the children's sincere words. It is a moment that softens her demeanor, and Miharu watches this side of her with fascination. Meanwhile, Ryo becomes engrossed in playing with the toy he received, a small plastic hidden blade. It is an unusual item for a child, but it keeps him entertained. Miharu, concerned about the toy's sharp appearance, decides to confiscate it for now. Ryo pouts in protest, but Miharu firmly insists it is enough. Soon after, Ryo demands to go to the bathroom. Miharu, resigned, asks Mizudori to wait for them while he takes Ryo to the restroom. She agrees without complaint, continuing to enjoy the moment with the other kids. On their way back from the bathroom, Miharu notices a commotion in the distance. He sees Mizudori standing still, with a stranger talking to her. From the expressions on the children's faces, it's clear something is wrong. Miharu walks closer and overhears the man making dismissive comments about Mizudori, suggesting she leave the kids behind and have fun with him. Before Miharu can react, Rei, Mizudori's little brother, bravely stands in front of her, trying to protect her from the boy. His small frame contrasts with his determined stance, but the boy carelessly shoves Rei, causing him to fall. Mizudori, who had remained calm up until that moment, suddenly changes. Her usually cold and distant demeanor shifts into anger, surprising everyone. She approaches the boy and slaps him across the face. The sound of the slap echoes, and the entire area falls silent. Even Rei, still recovering from the push, is wide-eyed, seeing his sister defend him so fiercely. The boy rubs his cheek in shock and turns his anger back toward Mizudori. He's furious and spits out his words, clearly not expecting her reaction. His anger grows, and he looks ready to retaliate. Just as things seem like they might escalate further, Miharu arrives with Ryo. He freezes for a moment, taking in the scene of Mizudori standing face to face with an enraged stranger. Without hesitation, Miharu steps in, positioning himself between Mizudori and the boy. He tells the boy to leave her alone, trying to defuse the situation. The boy looks at Miharu with disdain, sizing him up but remaining unfazed. Before Miharu can say anything else, Ryo's toy slips from his hand and falls to the ground with a clatter. The group looks down and mistakes it for a knife. Panic flashes across their faces as they assume Miharu is armed. The boy, now nervous, begins to back away, suggesting Miharu calm down. One of his friends mutters something, also backing away. The boys, still shaken, exchange uneasy glances. Relieved but embarrassed, they mutter to themselves and leave the scene. Miharu sighs in relief as they disappear into the crowd. As they prepare to continue their day at the mall, Miharu feels relieved that the situation hadn't escalated further. Ruri and Ryo excitedly jump on Miharu, clinging to him as he calls out to them. The two children climb onto his back, their giggles echoing through the busy atmosphere. Miharu extends his hand to Mizudori and Rei, inviting them to join him. Without hesitation, Mizudori takes his hand, and together they walk away. One of the boys who had been with the group bends down to pick up Ryo's toy, realizing it's just a toy. Once they are a safe distance away, Mizudori quietly breaks the silence, apologizing in a voice tinged with emotion. She admits she isn't just upset about what happened, but also about her own actions. Miharu glances at her and replies gently, glad that she's okay. Mizudori looks slightly embarrassed, an uncommon expression for her, and softly admits that it must have been embarrassing for him to see her in such a state. Miharu brushes it off, saying it's not something to judge. Before Mizudori can respond, Miharu points ahead and mentions that they have arrived, suggesting they enjoy the rest of the day. She nods, and the group resumes their outing. As they enter a new part of the mall, Miharu notices how dimly lit the area is. He briefly considers taking his cap off, realizing he's overthinking. He reflects on how, even if someone recognizes them, it wouldn't be a big deal. His mind drifts to the story of the princess in the White Castle. In that tale, only two little ones and a distant prince had managed to make the princess smile. Miharu muses that he is just a chaperone for the little ones and the princess. While they walk, Mizudori pauses, captivated by a sunstone on display, its warm hues shimmering in the light. She softly comments on its beauty, her voice carrying an unusual warmth. Miharu agrees, admiring the stone as well. Mizudori continues, reflecting that the stone's warmth reminds her of sunlight. She adds that since Miharu started coming to their house, it feels like there's more sunlight, as if things have become brighter. Miharu is surprised by her words and blinks in confusion. Mizudori nods, adding that more little ones have come into their lives, and one day, she might be able to smile again. Her words stir a memory from Miharu of when she asked if he could ever make her smile. Mizudori continues, admitting that he made her want to wish that for herself. Miharu, still processing her confession, rubs the back of his neck and responds, feeling flustered, saying it might be an exaggeration. She looks at him calmly, questioning if he really thinks so. Before Miharu can respond, someone accidentally bumps into Mizudori, quickly apologizing. Miharu instinctively reaches out, steadying her and asking if she's okay. Mizudori smiles slightly, saying he saved her again. Miharu brushes it off, apologizing for before, adding that he must have looked lame. To his surprise, Mizudori shakes her head and says she thought he looked nice, like a Rio prince. Miharu's eyes widen at her words, But before he can react, Rei tugs at Mizudori's hand, reminding her they need to keep moving. Mizudori takes Miharu's hand again, leading him forward, while Miharu's thoughts race. Noticing his silence, Mizudori asks if something is wrong, but Miharu quickly responds that it's nothing and suggests they keep going. Eventually, the day comes to an end, and as they prepare to leave, Mizudori thanks Miharu for spending the day with them, offering to repay him by cooking next time he visits. Miharu's younger siblings cheer at the idea, excited for more of Mizudori's cooking. Watching their joy, Mizudori's expression softens even more. Later, while sitting on Miharu's lap, Ruri suddenly comments that Mizudori looked like a princess today. Miharu raises an eyebrow, unsure of what Ruri means, but his thoughts drift back to Mizudori's earlier words about him looking like a prince. The comment lingers in his mind even after they return home that evening. Once the children are asleep, Miharu reflects on the day while in the bath. He can't stop thinking about how Mizudori grabbed his hand without hesitation or how she called him a prince. His heart races as he recalls her words, and for the first time in a long while, Miharu feels his face flush. He knows it will be a long time before he can forget that moment. As he reflects, he tries to remember Mizudori's face when she said he looked like a real prince, replaying the moment in his mind. Miharu isn't feeling well. It's 1:15 in the afternoon, and his thermometer shows a high temperature, indicating a fever. He sighs heavily, thinking that this is a real mess for him. Meanwhile, at school, one of his classmates asks Mikagi where Miharu is. Mikagi tells Mizudori and Kawano that Miharu seems to have a fever and left early. Kawano comments that Miharu might have caught a virus somewhere. Mizudori listens quietly, reflecting on the situation. Back at home, Miharu lies in bed, looking unwell. He finds it hard to believe this all started just that morning and wonders if he caught something from the crowd yesterday. Another concern crosses his mind. He took a long bath earlier, and now he's stressed. He thinks there's still some time before he needs to pick up his siblings, so he decides to stay in bed a bit longer. If he doesn't feel better by then, he'll ask the school to hold them until their mother can come. He also considers asking Mikagi to share his notes from the afternoon classes. With this thought, he sets an alarm and drifts off to sleep. Unfortunately, Miharu didn't wake up on time. While he's asleep, Rei is excited that their older sister has arrived. Ruri and Ryo are by his side. Mizudori, standing with them, realizes something unusual. She asks the twins if Miharu hasn't picked them up yet. Ruri responds that he hasn't. Mizudori tells them to wait for a moment, and grabs her phone. She searches for Miharu's number and tries calling him, but there's no answer. He isn't responding to her messages either, so she tries another number. This time, someone picks up. Mizudori introduces herself as a classmate of Miharu and asks if she's speaking to his mother. At that moment, Miharu is still in bed, overwhelmed by the fever. He feels like he's in a dream as he stares at the ceiling of the apartment, remembering the days when it was just him and his mother. His fever worsened after he returned from school, but he didn't call his mother because he didn't want to disturb her at work. Now Rei, Ruri, Ryo, and Mizudori are in his room, watching him. One of the twins asks if he's sick, and Miharu weakly responds that he is. Mizudori tells the others to let him rest and orders the twins to wash their hands and go to another room. Rei informs Miharu that they will be leaving soon and asks if he can wait a little longer. Miharu's mother had been contacted by Mizudori earlier, and she thanked her for the help. Mizudori asks Miharu's mother if she is being too pushy, and Miharu's mother reassures her, saying they've talked about this before. She explains that Miharu doesn't like relying on others, so she's glad he asked for help. Miharu's mother thanks Mizudori and invites her to come by again soon. She also asks Mizudori if she likes sweets and mentions that she will inform the school Mizudori can take care of the twins. Left alone, Mizudori sits on the floor, looking at Miharu lying in bed. He moans, his fever still not improving. Then, in a strange gesture, Mizudori places her hand on Miharu's chest and begins inhaling deeply, as if preparing for something. Miharu, still feverish and confused, starts to lose himself in his thoughts. His mind wanders, filled with memories and questions. He remembers he has a fever, and his mother isn't there to take care of him because she's at work. This thought leaves him feeling helpless, as if trapped in a situation he can't control. Her absence weighs on him, leaving a mark on his mind, a void that's hard to fill. Even though Miharu is often surrounded by his younger siblings, Ryo and Ruri, who give him affection and keep him company, he still feels alone. This sense of isolation lingers, becoming more apparent during moments like this. It's a feeling of abandonment that follows him, making the fever and discomfort harder to bear. As Miharu is lost in these thoughts, he suddenly hears a soft melody. Music seems to echo in the background, and he's not sure where it's coming from. With some effort, he slowly opens his eyes and sees Mizudori sitting in front of him. His eyes widen in surprise, trying to understand why she's there. The sight of the Ice Princess singing leaves him confused and intrigued. While Miharu tries to make sense of what's happening, Mizudori is lost in her own memories. She recalls her younger brother Rei when he was a baby and used to cry a lot. Her mother had told her that singing a lullaby would calm him. Mizudori tried, but it didn't work, and Rei kept crying. Her mother then asked what feelings Mizudori was singing with, which made her realize she hadn't thought about it before. She responded that she was only thinking about making Rei fall asleep as quickly as possible. Her mother, noticing this, explained that Rei felt lonely, and to calm him down, she needed to sing with kindness and love, so he would feel safe. These words come back to Mizudori now as she sits by Miharu's bed. She remembers her mother's advice and tries to apply it. Though not a skilled singer, she wants to let Miharu know through her song that he's not alone, that someone is there to take care of him in this vulnerable moment. Miharu, still dazed from the fever, opens one eye, confused by what is happening. He notices Mizudori beside him, singing softly, and wonders why she is there, singing to him as if he were a child. The lullaby leaves him puzzled, and he can't figure out why she is trying to soothe him with that song. What confuses him more is that it's Mizudori of all people. As he tries to make sense of this, something else catches his attention, the way she is singing. He realizes that, while her intentions are good, she isn't particularly skilled at it. The melody coming from her sounds clumsy, her voice stiff and lacking the softness usually found in lullabies. He thinks that maybe her voice should have been gentler, more calming, but still, he feels a certain warmth from the effort she is making. Even though she isn't a great singer, her attempt touches him in an unexpected way. As he listens to Mizudori, he hears children playing downstairs. This explains why she is in his house. She must be there to take care of his siblings. He realizes he has slept much longer than planned and feels a bit guilty about it. His thoughts return to Mizudori, and he feels the need to thank her for being there and for putting in so much effort, even though it clearly wasn't easy for her. However, before he can express his gratitude, he hesitates. He feels he should first apologize for being absent and likely causing everyone to worry. Then, she whispers to him, hoping he will get better soon, which leaves him surprised. She also whispers an apology, and Miharu feels confused. She explains that if she hadn't invited him out yesterday, he wouldn't have caught the cold. After saying this, she stands up and walks toward the door. Miharu, still trying to process everything, weakly gets out of bed, reaching out as if trying to grasp something that isn't there. His mind is clouded, and he wonders why Mizudori is acting so kindly yet so mysteriously. Before he can take any further action, his fever overwhelms him. His body gives out, and he collapses to the floor. The fall adds pain to the discomfort already caused by the fever, leaving him in a difficult situation. Mizudori, startled by the sound of his fall, looks down and sees him on the floor. Worried, she asks if she might have accidentally woken him. Miharu, still on the floor, explains with effort that he had been half awake when Mizudori came in, trying to downplay the situation. Despite his attempt, he cannot hide his weakened condition. Before he can delve deeper into his thoughts, Mizudori mentions that she sent him a message and asked his mother for permission to take the twins, Ryo and Ruri, with her. She has taken care of everything while he has been bedridden. Feeling guilty for not being available to help, Miharu apologizes to Mizudori and sincerely thanks her for everything she has done for him and his siblings. Mizudori begins to explain, but he interrupts her, calling her by name. His expression blends gratitude and affection, his face flushed from the fever. With a sincere smile, he tells Mizudori that he had a great time the previous day and that both Ryo and Ruri were also very happy. He emphasizes that it was only possible because she invited them to go out together. It is clear to Miharu that her presence made all the difference in making the day special for everyone. Upon hearing Miharu's words, Mizudori approaches him gently and unexpectedly touches his hair. She tells him that both she and her brother, Rei, also had a lot of fun with them. For a brief moment, an emotion shows on her face, but she soon returns to her usual neutral and serene expression. With her calm demeanor, she asks Miharu to go back to bed, noticing that he is still too weak to stand for much longer. Miharu, feeling the fever consume his energy, agrees and obediently returns under the covers. He snuggles into bed and thanks Mizudori for caring about him and his siblings. Mizudori then asks if he needs anything else now, offering to get him a glass of water or sweetly asking if he would like to hear another lullaby. Miharu, already settled in bed, replies that he is fine for now and does not need anything else. Although he is clearly moved by her kindness, Mizudori kneels beside his bed, leaning in closer. She softly asks if, when he feels better, they can go out together again, just like the day before. Mizudori leaves the room and walks downstairs, leaving Miharu immersed in his confused thoughts and emotions. As she moves down, she observes the children playing excitedly downstairs. A smile creeps onto her face as she watches Ryo and Ruri running around the house, their innocence bringing a lightheartedness to the atmosphere. At the same time, she reflects on what Miharu told her about the house they now live in. He mentioned that it belongs to the twins' father, and even after a year, he still hasn't grown accustomed to its size. It is a huge, spacious house, and for someone like Miharu, used to a simpler life, it feels like a whole new and unfamiliar world. Mizudori now understands better what he meant. As she looks around, she notices the vastness of the place. Just as she is about to leave, she notices a man outside Miharu's home. Mizudori, maintaining her usual reserved demeanor, wonders who this person is. Finally, the man introduces himself saying that he is Miharu and the twins' father. He looks tired, as if he has had a long day at work, but smiles upon seeing Mizudori and greets her. Later that evening, Miharu felt much better and thought about reaching out to Mizudori to thank her for helping him by looking after the children, and even singing to him, though not very well. Suddenly, as Miharu was coming down the stairs, the children's father appeared and asked if he was feeling better. Miharu was surprised to see Hiro, the children's father, had returned. He mentioned it had been a month since they last saw him and asked if Hiro would be able to relax this time. Hiro replied that he would stay for a week. Noticing how busy Hiro looked, Miharu's younger siblings asked if he was all right. Miharu smiled, ruffled their hair, and apologized for not being able to pick them up earlier. While Miharu spoke to the children, Hiro watched him and then said they needed to talk. Hiro brought up Miharu's midterm results, pointing out that he ranked 125th out of 187 students. Smiling, Hiro admitted that no amount of flattery could make those grades sound better. Miharu simply said he understood. Hiro then commented that Miharu used to get good grades in elementary school and wondered if high school had become more challenging. Miharu admitted that might be the case. Hiro continued, mentioning that Miharu's mother had done her best to raise him. While he didn't want to scold him, Hiro said that if Miharu's grades kept dropping, he would have to hire a nanny for Ryo and Ruri, just like before. Hearing this, Miharu grew upset and later that night, while the children were asleep, angrily told Hiro that his grades had nothing to do with his younger siblings. Hiro calmly asked if Miharu was implying that taking care of the twins didn't affect his time. He added that Ryo and Ruri were very attached to Miharu, and he was deeply grateful for how much Miharu cared for them. However, as their father, Hiro said it was his responsibility to address the issue if caring for them was interfering with Miharu's future. Despite being Miharu's stepfather, Hiro truly cared for him and his well-being, treating him like his own son. Even so, Miharu listened to everything Hiro said but couldn't accept it. While at Mizudori's house, Miharu found himself silently questioning why the children's father couldn't stay home longer. As he cooked burgers on the stove, he mentally criticized the man. At that moment, Mizudori, noticing his visible stress, asked if everything was all right. Snapping out of it, Miharu replied that he was fine. He then asked Mizudori if she was able to study at home, and if her grades had ever been a concern for her. He admitted he hadn't thought much about it but was interrupted as Mizudori answered. She mentioned that her mother being a teacher had likely helped her get used to studying at home. Miharu then asked what her midterm ranking had been, and Mizudori replied that she thought it was third place. Miharu told her she must be very smart, but Mizudori modestly disagreed. At that moment, Miharu reflected that if Mizudori could manage despite having similar circumstances to his, he had no excuse. However, He doubted he could handle things as well as she did. Mizudori then asked if something had happened. Miharu explained that Hiro had spoken to him earlier. Mizudori's face showed clear shock and disbelief as she processed what he had said. She asked if it was true that he would be separated from his younger siblings if his grades didn't improve. The idea seemed unimaginable to her, and she wanted to confirm it. Miharu, trying to remain calm, clarified that it wasn't about being completely separated from his siblings. Instead, it would mean losing some of his daily responsibilities, like picking them up from school or handling tasks he took pride in. Despite this clarification, Miharu still felt worried. After a brief silence, Miharu, looking defeated, asked Mizudori if he wouldn't have a reason to visit her house anymore if he could no longer pick up Ryo and Ruri. He awaited her response, already anticipating how this reality would affect his routine and the bond he was forming with Mizudori and the twins. As they continued preparing burgers, Mizudori looked at him seriously and asked what rank he would need to achieve to convince his father he was putting enough effort into his studies. Miharu paused, then extended his hand, spreading his fingers. Mizudori interpreted the gesture and asked if he meant 5th place. Miharu replied, saying she was assuming everyone performed as brilliantly as she did. For Mizudori, who likely always excelled in her studies, that assumption might seem natural, but for Miharu, reality was different. He recalled his stepfather Hiro's advice to aim for gradual improvement. By the end of the semester, he should try to reach 50th place, a significant jump from his current ranking of 125th. Surpassing 75 people felt like a daunting task, but he knew he had to try. Hiro, noticing Miharu's concern, explained that his performance shouldn't be directly compared to others. He used an example, saying that if all students in Miharu's grade applied to the same university, Miharu would need to compete with only those ahead of him. Reaching 50th place wouldn't be extraordinary, but it would show effort and progress. Even with this reassurance, Miharu still felt immense responsibility. He didn't want to disappoint his family, especially his twin siblings, who depended on him emotionally. Before he could dwell further, Hiro called his attention back, reminding him of something important. Hiro told him he had the right to choose how to live this phase of his life. He shouldn't focus solely on studying. Instead, he should explore different experiences like joining a school club, spending time with friends, or even getting a part-time job. Hearing this was surprising to Miharu, given the pressure he already felt. He looked at his mother, who was sitting beside Hiro, smiling gently. That moment gave him a new perspective. He realized he didn't need to shoulder all the weight alone. He could balance his studies with other activities while still making time for his siblings and friends. Later, when Miharu was with Mizudori, Hiro's words echoed in his mind. Hiro had reminded him not to forget to enjoy life, no matter how his test results turned out. Even if his grades were a challenge, he would still have the chance to experience important moments. Miharu began to think about what he should tell Ryo and Ruri if his situation worsened. He didn't want to worry his siblings, but he also didn't want to lie to them. At that moment, Mizudori, with her usual seriousness, caught Miharu's attention. She spoke firmly, saying they would do their best. She was determined to help him, and wanted to support him in his studies in any way she could. Her offer deeply moved Miharu, and he thanked her sincerely, feeling grateful to have her by his side. When he mentioned the possibility of no longer being able to pick up the twins, Mizudori calmly said it wouldn't be a problem. However, she added something that left Miharu curious. She said it would be a shame since she was already used to preparing food for 5 people. Those words stuck with Miharu. He looked at Mizudori, trying to understand what she meant. Not wanting to prolong the mystery, he asked her directly. Mizudori, with her usual composure, confirmed that it would indeed be a shame if he couldn't come over anymore. She spoke with conviction, saying they would find a way to ensure he could keep coming. Her determination made Miharu realize she was more concerned about his situation than he had imagined. Afterward, Mizudori began talking to the twins, who were nearby. Little Ray, curious as always, asked what they were discussing since it seemed serious. Mizudori patiently explained that there was an important test coming up at school, something both she and Miharu would need to prepare for. Ryo asked if that meant Mizudori would also be studying, and she confirmed, saying they would face it together. At that moment, the twins did something special. With bright smiles, they raised their arms and cheered for Miharu, offering words of encouragement. Their enthusiasm filled the room with positivity. Touched by their support, Mihara joined in, raising his arms and confidently replying that they could do it together. Later that night, Mihara sat at the table, deeply focused on his studies, surrounded by papers. The quiet of the house mirrored the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. He knew he had to give his best, not just for himself but also for his siblings and the future he wanted to create. Elsewhere in the house, Hiro, his stepfather, was sitting on the couch, chatting with Mihara's mother. Reflecting on the situation, Hiro admitted he might have been too hard on Miharu. Miharu's mother, grateful for Hiro's efforts, handed him a drink and thanked him for taking on the difficult role of disciplining her son. Hiro, thoughtful, mentioned that he might have spoiled Miharu too much. Miharu's mother, looking at him affectionately, said Hiro's presence had brought stability to their lives. She believed it was easier for Miharu to handle his responsibilities with Hiro by his side. Hiro, with the wisdom of experience, reminded her that things don't always go as planned. Their conversation shifted as Miharu's mother commented on how kind her son was. Hiro agreed but emphasized that Miharu, now in high school, needed to learn to make his own decisions and discover what he truly wanted in life. Meanwhile, Miharu remained focused on his studies while the twins slept soundly, as it was well past their bedtime. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of pages turning and pencil scratches. Across the city, Mizudori was also awake, studying diligently. She knew she had to prepare, not only for her own test but also to support Miharu. Suddenly, her younger brother Rei approached, his eyes sleepy. He asked if she was still awake. Mizudori said she was and asked if she had woken him up. Rei replied that he had just needed to use the bathroom. Glancing at her study table, he curiously asked if she was studying. Mizudori confirmed, explaining that she wanted to help Miharu as much as she could, even in small ways. Her goal was clear: to ensure Miharu wouldn't be separated from his siblings, Ryo and Ruri. Rei stared at her for a moment, surprised and admiring her dedication. Not sure what to say, he silently went to the bathroom. Later, proud of his sister, Rei shared with Ruri and Rei what she had said. Later, Miharu found himself at Mizudori's house, feeling the tension of being in such an unfamiliar situation. He never thought he would be in Mizudori's room. A few hours earlier at school, Miharu was already showing signs of nervousness. Sitting at his desk, he mumbled to himself while staring intently at a small notepad filled with notes he had written for review. The unusual scene didn't go unnoticed. Mikage, intrigued by Miharu's behavior, approached curiously. Surprised, Mikage remarked that it had been a while since Miharu seemed so serious about anything, especially studying. Miharu, known for his laid-back attitude, wasn't one to show such focus or dedication, so this sudden change caught everyone's attention. Nearby, Mizudori observed the interaction with her usual calm demeanor, quietly taking in every word. Miharu, feeling the weight of Mikage's question, gave a vague response, saying that studying had become necessary for him right now. Though he tried to hide his anxiety, it was clear to everyone that something more was going on. Exhaustion began to show in his heavy eyes, and Miharu admitted he wasn't used to staying up late, as he usually went to bed at the same time as his siblings. Still, determined to keep going, he got up and announced he was going to grab some coffee to stay awake. Mikage, silently observing, was impressed by Miharu's persistence but said nothing. The moment was interrupted when Mizudori unexpectedly called out to Mikage. Taken aback, Mikage was momentarily speechless. Mizudori rarely addressed him directly, making the moment surprising. Without hesitation, Mizudori asked Mikage what he meant by saying it had been a while since Miharu acted this way. Mikage, caught off guard, stumbled through his answer, still processing the rare occurrence of Mizudori speaking to him so casually. Later, at Mizudori's house, the atmosphere was calm but carried an unspoken understanding that the days ahead would be challenging for Miharu with the school tests approaching. Mizudori, always practical and organized, took charge and led Miharu and the children to her room. Once there, she told Miharu he could use her room to study until the tests, which were 2 weeks away. She explained that it would be easier for him to concentrate away from the noise and distractions caused by the children downstairs. Miharu, surprised by Mizudori's generosity, felt nervous about the offer. Her room, so personal and private, was now being offered as his study space. It was a clear sign of trust and consideration. Sensing his hesitation, Mizudori reassured him that she would be downstairs with the children, and if he needed anything, he could call or message her. She then turned to Rio and Ruri, explaining that they would have to play without Miharu until the tests were over. Although the twins were disappointed, they understood the importance of their older brother focusing on his studies. With Mizudori's support and the understanding of his siblings, Miharu stayed in her room, surrounded by his study materials. He felt the pressure of not wanting to disappoint the twins and the weight of being apart from them, but he also realized he wasn't alone. Mizudori, Rio, Ruri, and even little Rei were all rooting for him, giving him the strength he needed to persevere. Determined, Miharu took a deep breath and focused on his books. As he settled in Mizudori's room, Miharu couldn't help but notice the details around him. The carefully made bed, the wardrobe, and the shelves filled with books and personal items all reflected Mizudori's personality. The room was so intimate that Miharu found it difficult to concentrate, his thoughts scattered as his eyes wandered. While lost in his distractions, a soft knock on the door brought him back to reality. Startled, he straightened in his chair as Mizudori entered, carrying something in her hands. She apologized for interrupting him and, in her usual calm and steady tone, explained that she had brought him something to drink. Miharu, feeling nervous, quickly thanked Mizudori when she asked if there was any part of his studies he didn't understand. Embarrassed by the thought of seeming incapable in front of her, Miharu hesitated, creating an awkward silence. Mizudori stood before him with a serious expression, observing him closely as if waiting for him to say something more. Flustered, Miharu finally asked if she could check if his work so far was correct. He knew her help would be useful but couldn't help feeling anxious about it. Without hesitation, Mizudori stepped closer and unexpectedly ran her fingers through his hair, surprising Miharu completely. She calmly told him that he had done a good job, though her expression seemed unusual. Before he could react, she abruptly pulled her hand back and, in a quicker tone, apologized, explaining that she had mistaken him for Rei. Miharu, overwhelmed by confusion and embarrassment, lowered his head onto the table, feeling ashamed. Outside the room, Rio and Ruri called out, announcing it was time for a bath. The children cheerfully replied that they were coming but paused when they reached Miharu. Almost in unison, they said they wanted to wait for their father. Miharu, realizing they still believed their father would return home early, gently told them that he wouldn't be back anytime soon and, when he did, it would be late, long after they were asleep. The children nodded and went to take their bath. Another day, Miharu called Rio and Ruri to bed, but this time, they refused, saying they wanted to sleep with their mother. On a separate occasion, Miharu invited the twins to take a break and play a video game with him, thinking it would be a good way to relax. To his surprise, they both shouted for him to go back to studying. Miharu, completely taken aback, couldn't understand their reaction. He had planned the break precisely because he wasn't studying at that moment. Perplexed, he realized their behavior was unusual. He knew they were trying to support him, but their watchful and protective attitude made him feel like something deeper was going on. Miharu began to wonder if someone had influenced the twins or if they were hiding something from him. While he appreciated their concern, their actions felt excessive. Determined to uncover the truth, Miharu decided he needed to figure out what was happening and understand what his siblings were really thinking. Later, at Mizudori's house, Ruri was eating a snack and mentioned that her older brother loved it. Mizudori suggested taking some for Miharu or inviting him to join them, but the twins quickly stopped her. They raised their voices, insisting that she not disturb him. Mizudori, noticing their unease, gently asked if something was wrong. Her sharp eyes caught how Ruri was gripping her clothes tightly, a clear sign of anxiety. Beside her, Rio looked similarly upset. Finally, Ruri gathered the courage to speak, her voice trembling as she asked if they would no longer be able to stay with Miharu. Her question, filled with fear and uncertainty, revealed their deep worry about being separated from their older brother. She hesitantly added that she wondered if this would happen if Miharu's grades were poor, which only increased her anxiety. On the other side of the door, Miharu, who was about to enter, froze when he heard their conversation. His thoughts raced as he processed what they were saying. The fear of disappointing his younger siblings had always weighed heavily on him, but he had never imagined they understood the situation so clearly. Hearing their fears made him realize just how deeply they cared for him. Rei covered his mouth with his hands, clearly regretting what he had just said. He realized he had let something slip from their private conversations, a secret he hadn't meant to reveal. Regret was written all over his face as he looked at Mizudori, knowing he had made a mistake. Mizudori, noticing how sensitive the children were and how much the situation affected them, tried to comfort their troubled hearts. She bent down to their level and, with a calm and steady voice, assured them that there was no need to worry. She firmly stated that nothing would separate them from their older brother, promising that everything would be all right and they would stay together no matter what happened. On the other side of the door, Mihara listened to every word Mizudori said. He was surprised by the confidence and reassurance she conveyed to his younger siblings, something he himself had struggled to do. The strength she showed while comforting Ryo and Ruri filled him with gratitude and a sense of relief. He realized how much his siblings trusted her. The previous day at school, Mikage talked about Miharu's performance on the midterms. He mentioned that Mihara didn't seem to have put much effort into the tests, giving the impression he had given up on high school. However, Mikage, who had known Mihara for years, recalled how hard Miharu used to work during elementary school. He explained that Miharu's elementary school teacher had been strict and demanding. Failing a test back then didn't just mean a low grade, it meant parents would be called in for a meeting. Miharu always worked hard to avoid troubling his mother, who was busy and already had enough to deal with. The thought of causing her more stress motivated him to study harder and avoid disappointing her. Mikage's story surprised the girls, including Mizudori, who listened attentively. Mikage explained that Miharu's dedication back then stemmed from his desire to protect his mother from unnecessary burdens. Mizudori reflected on this, noting that Miharu's efforts were always for others, not himself. Mikage agreed, adding that Miharu was still the same, working hard for his siblings. His current dedication was yet another example of how he always put others' needs before his own. For better or worse, this was Miharu's true nature. Mizudori silently reflected on everything Mikage had shared. While she had already noticed Miharu's selflessness, hearing it from someone close to him made her appreciate his efforts even more. Despite the challenges he faced, Miharu's determination to keep going was what Mizudori admired most about him. Turning back to the twins, Mizudori spoke with her usual calmness, trying to reassure them. She told them Miharu was someone who could do anything for his siblings. She paused, looking at Ryo and Ruri before asking if they knew why that was. Ryo, confused, wondered if it was because Miharu had finished high school. Ruri, with wide eyes, asked if it was because he was their older brother, someone who always seemed strong. Mizudori responded simply, saying it was because Miharu loved them very much. The children fell silent for a moment, their faces showing a mix of surprise and thoughtfulness. Slowly, they began to understand that Miharu's love for them was the reason behind his dedication and hard work. Listening from behind the door, Miharu was deeply moved. He had always known he would do anything for Ruri and Ryo, but hearing Mizudori express it so clearly resonated with him. He felt a mix of pride and responsibility. As Mizudori encouraged the twins to have faith in their brother and trust him to overcome challenges, Miharu felt a wave of determination wash over him. He slapped his face, the sound echoing loudly and catching Mizudori and the children's attention. Mizudori looked in his direction, curious. As Miharu began climbing the stairs, still processing what he had heard, Mizudori appeared in front of him. She looked him in the eyes with a gentle smile and told him the twins were waiting for him and that he should do his best. Her words carried a warmth that motivated Miharu. Blushing slightly, he clenched his fist as a gesture of determination, silently promising to give it his all. In the following days, Miharu focused intensely on his studies. Beside him were Mikage and Mizudori, who had promised to help him. From a crack in the door, Ryo and Ruri watched their brother with admiration, their eyes shining as they saw him working diligently. Time passed, and the day of the long-awaited test arrived. The school was quiet as students sat at their desks. The teacher walked around, reminding them that this was just the beginning and encouraging them not to mess up on the first day. After confirming everyone understood the instructions, he signaled for them to begin. Miharu sat near Mizudori, completely focused. For him, this test was more than just a school evaluation. It was proof that he could stay by his siblings' side. The tests were finally over. A week had passed since Miharu submitted his papers, and now he was anxiously waiting for the results. When the report card finally arrived, Miharu couldn't bring himself to open it right away. He showed it to Mizudori and the kids, stalling for time. Everyone was on edge, watching him nervously. Finally, Miharu found the courage to open it. As he looked at the results, he let out a loud scream, not of despair, but of shock and amazement. He had ranked 38th out of 185 students. For Miharu, it was a huge relief, but Ruri and Rio looked confused. The kids didn't understand what the rank meant. To them, 38 was less than 50, so it must be bad. Before Miharu could explain, they burst into tears. Miharu, a bit annoyed but amused, scolded them and told them that in ranking, a lower number was better. Mizudori stepped in and gently explained the concept, helping the children understand. Ruri and Rio wiped their tears as it finally sank in. A look of relief washed over their faces as Mizudori reassured them that this meant Miharu could stay with them. Slowly, their frowns turned into bright smiles. Just when things seemed to calm down, the kids suddenly started crying again, but this time, they were crying so loudly that even Rei joined in. Miharu was shocked and confused. He tried to calm them down, but the tears kept coming. Mizudori, who was usually composed and calm, was also trying to hold back her own tears. She looked at Miharu and told him she was happy for him. Still overwhelmed, Miharu couldn't help but yell, asking why everyone was crying. That's when he realized they weren't sad. They were overwhelmed with happiness. The kids hugged each other, sobbing with joy, and Miharu let out a sigh of relief. After some time, everyone settled down. Miharu felt a weight lift off his shoulders now that the results were out, and everything had turned out fine. The stress was finally gone, and a wave of exhaustion hit him. The kids felt the same, admitting they had played all afternoon. One by one, everyone yawned. Mizudori suggested they all take a nap. She had already prepared the mattresses in the spare room, so the kids excitedly ran over and jumped onto the bedding. Miharu was surprised to see the setup and asked why Mizudori wasn't using her own room. She explained that she and Rei had been sleeping in the spare room lately. This brought back memories of when Miharu had been using Mizudori's room for studying. He remembered how stressed and self-conscious he had felt back then, and the thought made him a little embarrassed. Once everyone was settled, Miharu played with Rei and Rio using action figures, while Mizudori read a storybook to Ruri. Gradually, the children started to drift off to sleep, one by one. As the room grew quieter, Mizudori turned to Miharu and asked if he felt relieved now. Miharu nodded, saying he was grateful that everything worked out. He admitted to Mizudori that he didn't think he could have gotten through the tests without her support. The thought of being in a prep school would have been impossible for him. He thanked her sincerely, saying it was because of her that he could stay with his siblings. As they sat quietly, Miharu mentioned something that Ruri and Rio had asked him when they first met, but he paused, reflecting on how much had changed since then. Mizudori was curious, and Miharu explained how the twins first asked him what time he had to leave. At that time, the only adult in the twins' lives was their father, who was always busy working and rarely came home. Their teachers and babysitters kept changing, only staying for their scheduled shifts. The twins never had someone who was truly there for them all the time. Miharu understood why the twins had asked him such a strange question. They wanted to avoid the pain of someone leaving unexpectedly. Even though they were so young, they felt the weight of loneliness, even if they didn't fully understand it. Miharu realized that children need someone who will always be there for them. Mizudori listened as Miharu shared that he had experienced something similar as a child. He had often been left alone and knew how lonely it felt. Back then, he didn't understand that parents had work and other responsibilities. It didn't matter to him. All he knew was that he was alone. He couldn't bring it up with his parents, and even if he wanted to, there wasn't anyone on his side. When Miharu met the twins, something clicked for him. He realized that while he had no one to lean on in the past, he could now be that person for Rio and Ruri. He could be the person he had needed when he was a child. Miharu decided to stay with the twins because he never wanted them to experience the dreadful loneliness he had felt. In a way, he was doing it for his younger self. As Miharu gazed into Mizudori's eyes, he felt that she truly understood him. With all his heart, he smiled and thanked her for supporting him through everything. Mizudori smiled back warmly and slowly stood up. She told him that it wasn't her doing. It was all thanks to Miharu's own hard work and effort. Miharu felt nervous as Mizudori reached out her hand, but she gently patted his head and brushed his hair. She smiled and told him he had done a great job. While the twins slept peacefully, unaware of everything, Mizudori felt closer to Miharu than ever. Miharu, meanwhile, blushed deeply at the gesture. He asked if Mizudori was mistaking him for her little brother, Rei, but she simply smiled and said she wasn't. She then suggested that they rest as well. Miharu, still flustered, silently agreed. Later that night, Miharu called his stepfather, Hiro. Hiro had just arrived at his hotel and congratulated Miharu on his recent test results. He also thanked Miharu for everything he had done for the twins. Miharu agreed, but he admitted to himself that he had another, colder reason for his actions, one he didn't yet fully understand. Still, Miharu told Hiro that he was truly enjoying what he was doing now. Hiro had once told him that he had the right to choose how to spend his youth, and Miharu felt that this was exactly what he was doing. For a long time, Miharu had thought youth was something that didn't apply to him. It was something other people experienced. But now, with everything he was feeling and everything he had been through with the twins and Mizudori, he realized that he was experiencing it too. Hiro seemed to understand what Miharu was trying to say and laughed, which made Miharu panic. Embarrassed, Miharu quickly ended the call. Just as he hung up, there was a knock at the door. The twins were standing there, wide awake. Miharu asked why they weren't asleep yet, and they yelled that they couldn't sleep because of the nap they had taken earlier at Mizudori's place. Miharu sighed but agreed to play with them, just for tonight. Before they started, Miharu reassured them of the one thing they were most worried about. He promised that he would always stay with them.
Love to hear your thoughts, so make sure to drop a comment down below. If you want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. It's been a pleasure, and I'll catch you all in the next video.